self-control. Gravity is all that I know. She's over me. She's over me. She comes with her hypnotic dance. She holds me here with only a glance. She's over me. She's over me. All right, everybody, welcome to the Bedtime Stories from Beyond. I'm your host, Brent Thomas, and you are tuned in to the Paranormal Portal. I hope you guys have had a great Sunday. It was a good day. I got my beads. The minion decided I needed beads tonight, so I'm sporting the beads. He wanted me all dressed up for the show, so here I am. My Spider-Man shirt and some beads. So you got that going for you. But yeah, welcome to the show, everybody. It's a wonderful day. It didn't rain all day today, so it was a good thing. I got outside a little bit and had fun and stayed inside and made some homemade sausage. Ladies and gentlemen, I made homemade sausage. Like, cut the roast and seasoned it up myself and pressed out some links. It was an epic day here in the Portal House. So, but I hope you all are ready because it's time for bed. All right, everybody, welcome. And, thanks, Gemini. I was a little impressed myself, but I made it one other time before this. Not that this is the Food Network or anything, but, I enjoy sausage. What can I say? So for my birthday, one of the things that I got was a sausage press to put onto our KitchenAid, like, I don't know, it's like a tank. This mixer is like a tank, but they have the attachments you can put on the front. So apparently there's a meat grinder attachment, and then it also has a spout that you can do the casings and stuff. It was really cool. Not that you care probably all that much, but I felt like I accomplished something. So anyway, but welcome to the show, everybody. I hope you guys are doing well. We should have a good show, I hope. I'm just seeing all the people coming in. Some new names I haven't seen before. Chris, how you doing? I don't recognize the name, but good to see you. I'm glad you found us, however you found us. But let me go through and see who, at least right now, is in here. And again, this list is never perfect, but Bella's in here. Duke is here, Mr. Brian Sullivan. Cade Shipley, Chris, Gemini is here. Joe Kukowski's here. Ken Christensen is here. Lewis is here. MCAT is here. I am here. Rand Electric is here. Renee Harvey is here. And Rivers is here. So great to see you all. And Rivers, I like the Abakabar bike, brother. Bike. I wasn't expecting to be greeted in Indonesian, so that was pretty cool. But very cool. Very cool. All right. So let's start the show, shall we? So I got some stuff pulled up. We had a great show last night, by the way. If you haven't checked it out, please do. And before that, we had Deb, and it was a wonderful night of readings on Friday night. We even went into overtime on our YouTube. We went a full 3 hours. It was a lot of fun, though. We got through everybody. And I had a problem with the YouTube editor and couldn't edit. I wanted to edit that last show or that last call a little bit because of the language that the guy used was really harsh, and it's tough. I work really hard to keep this a family-friendly show because I know we got little ones listening and stuff. There's little kids out there that like to tune in with their folks, and I get messages all the time about that, and so it's really a very conscious effort for me. And it's not always easy for me not to use some colorful language, but I really worked hard at it. And when that call happened, and I know that person was in a lot of pain, and it's coming from a real angry and sad place. I understand that, but still, I got to get that cleaned up. And if you do happen to listen to that episode, just know that I would have cleaned it up right away, except that the YouTube editor didn't work, and I had to do a bunch of help tickets with YouTube and go back and forth. And we got it sorted now, and I just got it. It just finally came up and was available just before the show. So hopefully I'll get that all doctored up before the end of the night. Also, ladies and gentlemen, tomorrow's Monday, which means our podcast drops. Our Monday, one of 3 podcasts for this next week. We drop podcasts on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And podcasts are it's an official podcast. It's carried by a company called Revolver, who distributes it all over the place. And we drop three a week: Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Monday is usually ghost stories. Wednesday is UFO, extraterrestrial related, or in that vein, and then Fridays is cryptid and Bigfoot. And so we really cover the full spectrum on these podcasts. And it's a lot of fun. So I hope you guys will help support that endeavor. And if you're not already subscribed, please check it out. But you can find it anywhere you get podcasts. So it's on iTunes. We got our own little tile in the window over there on iTunes. We are on Spotify, Pandora, iTunes, iHeart. What else? The Google Play. There's just a gajillion of them out there, and I have a whole list. And I can check the analytics of it, and it's really cool. But I'd like to see some of our brothers and sisters across the pond start to pick it up. There's been a great pickup in the U.S., a little bit in Canada, not really great. So our neighbors to the north and across the pond and around the world, definitely check it out, please. That would be really cool. I'd love to see those international numbers go up. That would be a lot of fun. So. Anyway, that's enough of me running my gums. Oh, yeah, that's right, Duke. Thank you for reminding me. Duke and I last week recorded a episode of World Bigfoot Radio together. He had me on as a guest, so I'm not sure exactly when that'll be. He's everywhere. I know, it feels like it. I feel like I'm spread everywhere too, brother. I don't know exactly when it'll be coming out, but I know Duke's working on it. I sent him a bunch of pictures of things that we covered on the show, including things from back in Minnesota that I've never shared anywhere else except not even on the portal. So you're going to see images that I've never shared anywhere outside of really close friends. So definitely check out World Bigfoot Radio when that episode drops, and you'll hear my experiences from back in Minnesota before I even came out here. Yeah, it's pretty cool. And so Duke is going to be able to, or he's going to get the honor of premiering those images to the world. So, I mean, they're nothing over the top spectacular. Well, I thought they were, but I mean, you see images all over the web of Bigfoot activity and stuff, but some really cool things. And then he's going to show my footage that I captured of what I believe is a UFO on his World Bigfoot Radio as well. So there's a few things coming up, and including a structure that Don and I checked out up here. So a lot of great material. I hope you guys enjoy it. I felt really, really pumped up after that episode that we recorded. It just felt great. Duke and I had a wonderful conversation. He makes it pretty easy to have a good show, though, so it was a lot of fun, but I hope you guys will check it out, and you can find it on YouTube. Just look for World Bigfoot Radio on YouTube, or look for Brian Sullivan's page, and that is the thing. So anyway, let's get to some stories here, ladies and gentlemen. All right, let's see. What the hell do I have going on here? I got stuff open all over the place. Oh, this is still open from last night. Wow. That's what I get for making sausage instead of working on my organization. Here we go. All right, so let's get some stories under the way here, and allow me to entertain you, if you will. Episode 81. Is it out, Duke? I'm sorry, I don't know. I'm just seeing a piece of the chat, and Duke said episode 81, and I don't know if our episode is released yet. If it is, that'll be news to me too. Okay, so anyway. Oh, he said soon. Okay, so it's not out quite yet. All right, so let's get to the first one, and this one's coming out of Texas, ladies and gentlemen. All right, let me move in here. All right, so a little bit of prologue is in order on this story. I met this girl, Andrea, through a self-proclaimed shaman named Andrew. They were both in their early 20s, and I was almost 17 at the time, and she and I connected immediately. Andrew even said before we met that we were reflections of each other. We both sort of abandoned our other friends for a while and became really, really close. We never did any Ouija together, but it was an unspoken understanding that we were both practicing spiritualists and sensitives. We never bragged about our experiences, and there was never any pretense. It was simply a close relationship and friendship built on understanding and common personalities. At least it was for a while. She lived with her grandparents in a very old home, excuse me, in Grapevine, Texas. Andrea lived in the room that her mother had lived in when she was a girl, and both of them had a whole bunch of issues with depression and chemicals. And boy, you could feel it. The air was much thicker in that room. And there were strange stains on the carpet and the walls, and the smell was really unbelievable. And I tried to help her clean it more than once. Only it seemed like the room just wanted to stay messy. For instance, one evening in the spring of 2006, after a rigorous attempt at making her room livable, we decided to walk to the nearest bistro and get some cream sodas. And she lived in a suburb next to a very posh part of town, and we shopped there a lot. And when we returned, we both paused at the entrance to her hallway. My eyes were frozen on a strange, ancient black and white portrait of a man or a boy, and it was hard to tell. He almost looked like half a gremlin to man or something, with a squashed face and a tuft of white hair in his head. His eyes were beady and seemed to come out of the picture, and smoke seemed to surround him in the photo, and I can't tell you how frightening it was. "You haven't noticed that before?" she asked, getting uncharacteristically quiet. "Yeah, I also never noticed how many mirrors your grandmother has up." What I couldn't take my eyes off the strange picture, while I couldn't take my eyes off the strange picture, I also saw both of us in the corner of my eye, in the mirror to our left, only we weren't the only ones there. There was a black mass entering behind us. "Who's he?" "My great-grandfather," she said, staring at the picture along with me. "I never really met him, but he hates me." She started moving down the hallway, her head bowed, and I started following, shutting my eyes tightly from the awful portrait. And it wasn't just his strange appearance, it was the seemingly purposeful way he'd been placed in front of the long, dark hallway, as if to look you up and down before going into the bowels of the home. When I opened my eyes, we were halfway down the hall, and my heart was beating in my throat, and out of nowhere, The black mass seemed to rush around me, and I felt something chasing me, and then it pushed my shoulder forward as if taunting me. I ran into Andrea's bedroom as she'd gone far ahead of me. "What the hell is that?" "I'm not really sure." She sat on her bed staring out her window, but never go into my backyard. I put my drink on her desk, and the desk had been in her family through 3 generations. Why not? I knelt at the end of her bed, and my torso resting near her feet. I used to go out there, even though I was always scared of it, and I could hear voices, and they never said anything clear. It just was jumbled up whispers. So one day I went out there and found a dead bird in the far back next to an old tree, and then I went out the next day and there was a dead cat in the same exact place. And I didn't go out the third, and I never go anymore. But what's here, Andrea? I wasn't unfamiliar with these things, but the activity surrounding this family seemed angrier than anything I'd ever encountered. They love it when we pay attention to them like this. Suddenly there was a crash behind me, and my drink had been thrown of its own accord onto the floor, creating a new stain. And I got the distinct feeling whatever energies resided there preferred nobody interfered with the messiness of that room. I just looked at Andrea, and she looked at me, and things got progressively worse. Scratching started sounding from the outer wall along with a strange human groaning, and it was too harsh of a scratch to be an animal because the wall seemed to shake along with it. After that night, I tried to keep our visits at my home, because when I tried to convince Andrea we should investigate and try to release whatever spirits were trapped, she seemed almost like she wanted them there or was too afraid of them, and more our friendship grew estranged. She started becoming angry and bitter all the time, and her rooms started becoming infested with roaches, and I just couldn't stay there at all anymore. We eventually stopped talking, but I remember the night so vividly, and I often worry about her. Yeah, that's a tough thing, man. That darkness is a sickness sometimes. It just permeates some people. And with her being a sensitive on top of that, that's even worse. All right, so next one is Florida, ladies and gentlemen. And by the way, ladies and gentlemen, the phone is open. If you guys want to call in or you have something that you feel you need to share, please do. It's fine to hear from you guys, and the number is 720-923-0500. Again, 720-923-0500. So, out of Florida, what's going on there? I remember when my daughter was 14, or my daughter, now 14, was only 2 months old. My now ex-husband and I were staying at his parents' house to watch over the house and take care of his 13-year-old sister, Shannon, while they were on vacation in Mexico. And we were sleeping in his parents' bedroom, and our 2-month-old daughter, Amberleigh, was sleeping next to my bedside, sorry, in her own bed. And I woke up in the wee hours and saw a figure, a torso and a head, hovering over my daughter as if looking at her every feature. Now, I wasn't really sure what I was seeing, and the only light in the room was a dim red light from the clock that was on the nightstand next to me. When this being knew that I had awakened, it stood up straight from a bent-over position, like somebody standing bent over, looking at a baby sleeping but with no legs, and looked at me, then very quickly came right up to my face as if to study my features. I have got chicken skin bad right now just talking about this. And then I started poking my husband to wake him up and to turn on the light, but he didn't wake up in time before this thing darted off and went through the bedroom door. My husband turned on the light, and I told him what had happened, and we ended up going back to sleep. But the next day after I had time to think about this being's face, what it looked like, I thought, you know what? This looks like my husband's grandmother, who died of cancer 2 months before this happened, before she ever got to see her great-grandchild or even meet me in person. We went through some pictures of her, and I swear to God, to this day, that it was her. Even though this being had only the top part of the body when it was right in my face, it felt like looking at a real person. She was waiting for us to have Amberleigh and go up to Alabama to see her, but she died so quickly after being diagnosed that it was too late. So she came to finish her business of seeing her grandchild and me. It was a scary way of doing it for me, but no harm, no foul. That's a beautiful thing. I don't know. Those kind of stories I don't think are very frightening. I'm more interested in the descriptions of how it appeared and how it suddenly was, stood up from being bent over looking at the baby, looked at her, and then boom, was right in her face. It's just like, and I've seen so many different videos that seem to portray these spirits moving, and honest to God, they can just move in the blink of an eye, just like an anime kind of thing, where like if you ever watch Dragon Balls and they'll be standing like a mile apart, and then suddenly you get that blurry thing, and then one guy's standing right behind the other one, not even looking at him, like, you can't hit me. It's one of those things. But like, it's like the spirits can actually do that kind of stuff. Like they can just, at the speed of thought, be in a different place. They don't have the physical stuff. I'm sorry, I keep itching my nose, but I was petting my cat earlier, and it feels like the hair is all over my face. It's just that they don't have to deal with physics. They don't have the physics slowing them down like drag and gravity and all that stuff because they are energy, I suppose. So they can just move in a blink. So a lot of times when you're watching, let's say for instance, Ghost Adventures or something, and they're in a house and there's something going on right in front of them, and then boom, there'll be something going on in another part of the house, and boom, down in the basement, up in the attic, and I think it can just be the same spirit, but they can literally move that quickly to just raise havoc all over the place. Like they don't have to deal with our physical limitations, and I'm pretty sure that our brains really do work that quickly. Like we're used to moving at the speed we can walk and run, and we're used to, how our bodies move, and we equate that with our speed. But there's so many stories of people being in very dangerous situations, or situations that were just, some kind of danger was coming in a quick hurry. And they talk about how time just seemed to slow down, and like a second took like a minute, and how they were able to react, and have things happen where they shouldn't have been able to. But I think our minds can move that fast. It's just that we are conditioned to operate at the speed of our bodies, and that's why, we don't seem to be really adept in sometimes, at least physically. But I think we have the ability to move even faster, and certainly martial artists and fighters, professional fighters, they train their actions and reactions so acutely that they can walk into a ring with another professional fighter and go 12 rounds. Whereas if it was, Joe Street Tough entering the ring with a professional fighter, even though that guy might be a really good fighter on the street, he's going to get eaten alive by a pro because their reaction time is so much quicker, their power, and so that you can train our bodies, and martial artists doing, amazing feats of reflex and balance and stuff. So I think we're capable of a lot more. We just don't know it. But spirits aren't dealing with any of those physics at all. They don't have to deal with the reaction time and adrenaline and any of that stuff. They can just be here and gone. I'm pretty sure that's the case. Just saying. Just sharing my thoughts, because I got the microphone, and well, that's what I get to do. But if you have thoughts of your own on that, you're welcome to call in and tell me. The phone line's open. So we're going to go to Michigan on this one. Let's see what's going on there. This one's pretty short. I've been haunted for a while now. Paralysis attacks, cold drifts. I'm not sure what cold drifts are. If that's like cold air. Is that what he's talking about? I don't know. Or she, actually. It's a she. Pokes, taps, and all that good stuff. And it doesn't really scare me anymore because I figure if it were something evil, it would have done something evil other than just creep me out on a daily basis. Well, the other night I was laying in my bed and I was really having trouble going to sleep because I'd been fighting with my boyfriend for just a little while earlier, and I was in a really bad mood. And when I'm stressed out, mad, upset, sad, or angry is when I get the feeling of the presence is most dominant. Why, I wonder? I then left my room and went to the living room to turn on the TV and relax a while. And now, mind you, I am past the whole wild imagination stage, and I'm fully aware of what is going on most of the time. Everyone in my house was still awake, so I'm positive that it wasn't just me scaring myself. So I was laying on the couch and glanced out the window for a quick second. We have a floodlight that is disgustingly bright on our back porch, and I was pretty scared, so I wouldn't look for a long time, but every time I glanced over, I saw someone standing about 20-ish feet away from the window. I knew it wasn't a live person. I knew they knew I was looking, and I knew it wasn't evil. But the extra creepy part is that they were wearing exactly what my boyfriend had been wearing earlier that day. I know it wasn't him because he just wouldn't do that. The face of the body, The face of the body looked blank. No eyes, no nose, no mouth. What was that? I don't know. Could be some kind of projection, I guess. I don't know. Maybe your boyfriend's more creepy than you realize. There's always that. All right, coming from Hawaii, which is a wonderful place, and where several of our listeners are in Hawaii, so lucky people. I used to live in Hawaii for about 9 months, and I hear many stories about hauntings that take place in everything from night marchers, the ancestral dead, that walk the island, to ghosts in the Pali. I don't know what Pali is, Pali. I had some strange experiences while I was there, and I'd like to share one of them with you. In 2004, there was a girl I really liked, and one night I summoned up the courage to ask her on a date. And we went to a restaurant and drank some wine, and at about 11 p.m., we decided to go to a beach called Mokapu, which is near Honolulu. And it was really dark, and there was hardly anybody out, and we talked about each other's lives and experiences, and we laid down and listened to the ocean for a few hours, and at about 2 a.m., strange things just started to happen. The girl and I felt our hands being touched by something small. We thought it was miniature crabs, but when we looked, there was nothing there. The moon was full that night, so you could see a lot of stuff, but we didn't see any crabs. But then the weirdest sound was heard by both of us. It sounded like a baby crying. Keep in mind it was 2 a.m. and nobody else was around. The nearest house was about 5 miles away, and we kept on hearing the crying. We both thought it was a cat or something, and when we looked in that direction of the crying, there was no cat to be found. We kept on feeling our hands being touched as well, and we both had had enough when we decided to leave, and I just put it to the back of my mind thinking that it was crabs and a cat. 2 months later, I was sitting with my hairstylist, who is a local, and we began talking about strange things that happen on the island, and we were talking about night marchers and haunted burial grounds, and then she started talking about Mokapu. And I asked what was so scary about that place. And she said that a long time ago, Hawaiians used to take the deformed babies and kill them at Mokapu. Oh, that's so sad. She told me that some people say that if you stay there long enough, you will hear them crying. And she told me that she heard them herself one night when she was there, and the hair on the back of my neck and the entire body stood up. And then I told her what happened to me there. I knew nothing about this story until the day she told me. And until now, it still gives me the creeps. Wow, what a horrible thing. Oh, dear God. I know in the ancient world things were different, of course. I mean, people had to, I guess, participate in order to survive. It wasn't real common to, have children that were suffering from maladies. I didn't know that was because they would, not let them live. I guess that's news to me, but what a horrible thing. But, I guess it was a different time and a different era and a different place. So who am I to judge? All right, the next one's coming from Pennsylvania. This one's pretty long, so this should keep you entertained for a while. All right, no calls. We're doing good. Okay. Game of Thrones. Don't talk about Game of Thrones, Lewis. This is the Portal. Game of what? Aren't you a little old for games? All right. So, Pennsylvania. For those of you who haven't... Oh, come on. Don't do the fluffy stuff. Okay, so for those of you who haven't read my previous story, I guess I got to read it because you're going to reference it. Just let me fill you in briefly. The house my fiance and I are living in has been on the fritz lately. There have been a lot of somewhat negative energy in the house, most of which has been centered around our kitchen. We're not certain if there is one spirit or two spirits, and whether one is good and the other is evil, or just that one is angry for its inability to cross over, or whatever. But we believed one, if not both, was the spirit of Michael's grandfather, who passed away quite a few years ago. Well, I took the advice of a number of people who posted comments about how I should deal with the situation that I'm in, and the results have been effective in some areas, but seem to have worsened the situation in another sense. First and foremost, we had an electrician come and look at the kitchen light that had exploded, and not much to my surprise, the electrician could find no reason at all as to why it did that. The wiring wasn't frayed and was up to date, and everything was perfect, according to him. Michael and I decided to take action. I had a Christian blessing done on the house at the request of my love, and it seemed to calm down the kitchen quite a bit. Objects stopped disappearing, coffee stopped making itself, and overall negative feeling was that was once present had dissipated. But a few days later, Michael and I noticed that the computer room had suddenly become the focus of our resident ghost antics. Batteries disappeared overnight, the computer started turning itself on and off, and we'd wake in the morning to find papers and mail strewn all over the floor. And while we are the only two living in the house and the dog sleeps in our room with us, we keep the door closed. At that, I decided to have a professional pagan blessing done on our house, and the results were similar, but it lasted only a week before the antics started up again. Michael and I began decorating our house with crosses, stars, and other personal religious relics that were meaningful to us, and I was charging crystals and putting them in different areas of the house, and we pretty much attempted putting up images that we thought might banish the spirit, or at least encourage it to move on, but much to our dismay, the results remained the same. A few days of peace, and then more problems. I tried meditating and asking the spirit to leave, which didn't work, possibly because I was only half able to focus due to an unexplainable, eerie sensation I had. I then decided to call a medium to come over to our house and contact the spirit, or at least tell us whether it was two or one, and figure out just what it was trying to accomplish in our house. I was stunned by what this woman had to say. She told me the spirit is Michael's grandfather, and he chose not to cross over yet because he's waiting for his wife. He's been trying to carry on with activities he used to do when he was alive, like making coffee, moving things to where he thinks they would be appropriate, and she even told me where the batteries and kitchen remote were hidden. But he's angry. Elsie, his wife, had a stroke a few years ago, And since then, her children have been fighting over who gets control over what assets and who will get what from the will, including her money, her house, and her car, etc., while she's still alive. The most horrible part is that everyone is so focused on Graham's money and belongings that no one is taking care of her. Since the stroke, she can't really talk very well, and she can't walk, and the family has become self-indulgent and unconcerned with the well-being of their own. And that was what the medium said Michael's grandfather feels like, because of it, he's been projecting negative energy into the house. I asked the medium to try and help him cross over and to explain to him that Michael and I do take care of Graham whenever she's over at the house, and that we would like for him to stop taking out his anger on us. So that medium performed a blessing and talked to Pap, asking him to please cross over because it was his time. And Michael and I took Pap's ashes, which used to be in our house, over to where Graham was living so husband could be with wife. The occurrences stopped, but something's wrong. Although Michael and I had an inkling that something was wrong before, and the physical oddities have ceased, something new has arisen, and I'm not sure what to think. Not once in the entire time the medium was present did she mention anything about a second energy, but now, every time I go to sleep, I have terrible nightmares, very, very vivid nightmares, that scare me ridiculously, almost to the point of not wanting to go to sleep. They started a few days after everything else stopped, and most of them revolve around me being chased. And there's a knife, although the dreams are often enough to cause me to wake up sweating, and usually holding my hand to my throat. The most I can remember is a knife and being chased. Michael had a week's vacation, and slept on the couch most of the time because he said the room just made him feel uncomfortable. And I asked him if it was the heat or if it was the cold, and he said neither, and he just felt uncomfortable. And another question comes to mind. When Mike was young, he saw his reflection in the mirror brushing his teeth when he himself was not. And that was while Pap was alive, so what caused that? And what about the shadows in the mirrors and the evil-looking face ingrained on the back of our bathroom door? Something just doesn't add up. And I'm worried that maybe we made a mistake in asking Pap to move on. And should I attribute the nightmares to all the scary movies on television because of Halloween approach, or is it something more than that? And if it is something more, what could it be? What kind of energy can elude a medium? I'm not sure what to do. Well, any kind of energy can elude a medium. There's medium, and these beings don't have to be detectable in a lot of cases. They can perhaps move and not be in the house at the time as there. I don't know, and I suppose it depends on the medium. She may be really gifted in talking to deceased people, but what if this isn't a deceased person? Is she capable of detecting or dealing with the other kind of spirits? I know a lot of people believe they are, that they are able and geared towards dealing with really dark things, but I'm here to tell you I don't believe that at all. I don't believe most people are. If something really, really dark and really horrible comes around, there's not many people alive that are prepared to deal with it, to be honest with you. And that's not to empower these things or give them any give them any praise. It's not. It's just that there are some things around that are so dark and twisted that there's not a many souls alive that could deal with that. But fortunately, I think those things are kept in check and balance by a lot of other different things. There is a balance to the universe. So, all right, I'll just leave that there, I guess. But good story. I don't envy them having to be in that situation. All right, how big is this one? This one's pretty short. Okay, all right, let's go to this one. This one's coming from Tennessee. I was at my stepsister's house and in Sherelle's, my oldest sister's room, playing a game. My two real sisters, Rebecca and Samantha, were there too, and our parents were out grocery shopping, and we were all kind of hungry, so we decided to go to the kitchen and get something to eat. And when Sherelle left the room and turned off the light, I decided to try to scare Samantha. I sometimes like to reach my arms out and moan like a zombie, and I started acting like a zombie when I felt something touch my shoulders. Someone was reaching around my neck, and I immediately ran out of the room, thinking it was Sherelle. But when I got into the kitchen, everyone else was already there. Sherelle was putting chicken leg into the microwave, which indicated she had been in there too long to have done it. Everyone else was too small to reach my neck anyway, so it couldn't have been them, so I guess it was a ghost that did it. Later on, I went back to my house, and it was bedtime, and I wasn't tired, so I snuck into Sherelle's bedroom, and I saw her taking out her phone battery. She said it was dead, and as I walked in, and we started talking, and I got tired and decided to go to bed, and when I was about to leave, her cell phone started ringing. She flipped the phone open, not remembered she had removed the dead battery, and it instantly died when she opened it. She came into my room, and we locked ourselves in, and we stayed there for a while. Then the door flung open, but nobody was there. We were both pretty scared, but after a while, she decided to go back to her bedroom and go to sleep. The ghost, or whatever it was, stopped bothering us after that. I think someone learned their lesson. That's what I'm thinking. Someone went, oh, really? Going to scare her, huh? All right, let's see what else we got. How much time we been at this? 42 minutes. God, these times just fly, ladies and gentlemen. 23 of you are in here. Oh, I'm so thrilled that all you guys are here. I know some aren't, because isn't this like Game of Thrones night though right now? So I suppose I have to compete against Game of Thrones. That's a pretty tough one. I've never even watched that show, and I'm pretty sure that I probably will at some point, but I I find that I don't watch much of anything anymore because, honest to God, a lot of TV shows just stress me out. It's like I don't need to watch people pretend to be stressed and to pretend to be dealing with stuff. I don't know what it is, and I'm not belittling, that at all. It's fine if that's your thing, but I just find that I just get mad. It's like when I was a kid, I could hardly watch Gilligan's Island because Gilligan pissed me off all the time. It really infuriated me that everybody wanted to get off that island, and he kept screwing everything up. How they didn't nail that clown to a tree, I don't know. So, but they kept putting up with Gilligan, and I got to give them credit for that. Oh God, you're getting little peeks into my skull. All right, this one's coming from Texas. I'm sure we all heard stories of spirits being spotted on roadsides and being picked up and requested to be taken to their homes, only to find out that the person had died a long time ago. And that's mostly what this one is about, except that it is different in another way. It happened to a taxi driver that my parents know, and I think he comes from the family, very distant though. And he was driving home late one night, and after a long day of working and taking people here and there, and he didn't have the energy to really pay attention, and he turned onto a road which led to his house, and when he saw a girl by the side of the road, and she looked like she was waiting for someone, and she was wearing a blue dress, a really fancy one that you probably would use for a high school prom or something. And like I said, he wasn't paying attention, but he didn't have the stone heart to just leave her there all alone in the night, so he drove up to the girl's side and asked her if she needed a ride, and the girl nodded and got in the passenger side of the car. The taxi driver drove along the road, hearing the girl's instructions of how to get to her house. And now this part of the story might sound completely unbelievable, but this is how I was told. The taxi driver lives in this forest-like area, and there are lots of trees and plant life. And at the moment he was passing the low part of the forest or whatever, which means that if you were standing in the forest, you would have to go or you'd have to climb upward if you wanted to get to the road, like on a hill. The man wasn't prepared for the next thing that happened. The passenger's car door was suddenly thrown open, and the girl whom the man picked up flew out of the car and into the low part of the forest. The strange part was that he didn't hear the thumping noises from which should have been heard from such a violent landing. He stopped the car and ran out, but no matter how long and how hard he looked, he couldn't find the body of the girl that he had picked up. The taxi driver gave up and just went home, but questions were burning him inside, so first thing next morning he followed the directions the girl had given him and arrived to a house, and he knocked and asked if any girl by the name of whatever, I don't know the name. The bad thing was that the people said that the girl had died several years ago. When he asked them how, they said that she had been at a party. When it was time to leave, she left with her friend because he didn't have a ride. Halfway, when she was about to get home, the passenger side door flew open, and the girl slipped out of the vehicle due to the high velocity and speed at which her drunk friend was driving, and she rolled off the road into the huge forest trench. A knock on the head from a large tree trunk caused her death several hours later. Her spirit just reenacts her death. With anyone her has the heart to give her a ride. I think it meant with anyone who has the heart to give her a ride. Those kind of stories, I don't know. They're pretty much everywhere. There's some kind of like girl who died in a car wreck and wants to go home, and the people pick her up and bring her home, and she disappears, and they go up to the house and say, well, does so-and-so live here? No, she died years ago. That kind of thing. And I think these kind of stories are mostly legend. I don't doubt that they're still being circulated and told as if they're fact, and maybe they're based on some kind of fact somewhere in the past, but these kind of stories I think are mostly just those legendary ghost stories that everybody loves. I don't know. I could be wrong. Don't get me wrong. It is possible, but you just hear so many variations. Another one similar to this is it doesn't seem to matter where you go, but if you go to a large hotel, there's a story of a jilted bride who was stood up at the altar and goes to the hotel as they were planned for their honeymoon or whatever and commits suicide by jumping out the window. And every hotel has this story. I mean, there's dozens of these stories across the nation, or hundreds. It's just one of those things that gets repeated, and people are sure that there's truth to it. And again, maybe it was true in one of those situations, but those stories just kind of get passed along, and everybody kind of adopts them, I guess. So anyway, this one's coming from Ohio. Oh, man. I don't know if this one's coming from Ohio. I don't know if I can read this much. I don't know if I can do this whole one because let me look at the next two. If they're short, I'll just read those. This one's really long. That one's not long at all. I could read that one for sure. And let's see what the last one I pulled up. That one's really long too. Oh my God, that's longer. That'll be tomorrow night's for sure. There's no way I'm going to be able to read that one tonight. I guess I'll read the first one and the short one. So, Ohio. The story starts off a few years ago. I was living with my parents in our old house in Ohio, and I have a few friends who are into the spiritual world and visit so-called haunted houses all the time. They stumbled on a book of how to achieve an out-of-body experience, and after only a couple days, they came running to me with stories to tell. And I've never been very spiritual, and I've never truly believed in God, and everything just seemed to be far-fetched to me, but I've always kept an open mind, so when they began telling me stories, I listened, and I wanted to see if what they had experienced was true, so I decided to attempt it myself one night. I pulled the blankets off the beds and left only the white sheets, and I took off my watch, necklaces, and rings that I usually wore to bed, and I stripped down to just my boxers and climbed onto the bed and turned off the light. And I picked a single spot on the ceiling and just stared at it, and after a few seconds, my mind started to drift off. I kept having to remind myself that what I was attempting, and otherwise my mind would drift and I would end up just rolling over and going to sleep. After about 10 minutes of fighting with this spot on the ceiling, I started hearing static or humming or buzzing noises that reminds me of the white static on the TV when the cable goes off. And the first thing that popped into my mind was that I had left the TV on, but afterwards I recalled that I hadn't. Once this sound came into play, I started feeling weightless, and I could feel myself being lifted off the bed. In my mind, I was shouting, "I did it." And suddenly, everything that I thought I knew about was wrong. I was so proud of myself. Then, without a warning, I noticed something moving into my vision from the corner. It was a face, black eyes and no mouth, and it looked more like a mask, and surrounding it was long white hair like streams flowing off the back and rippling like it was floating in water, and beside the floating face was two hands, one on each side and both having the same hair-like tentacles off the back. And it moved through the air so gracefully and then came to a halt right above my own face, staring down into my eyes and blocking my vision of the spot on the ceiling that I was focused on. Once I saw this, my heart stopped and something else entered my mind, my friend's words telling me, if you're not careful, something else will enter your body during your out-of-body experience. And just then, the white figure jolted towards me, and I woke up on my bed sweating. Now, I fast forward through time a little more. I got a few years older and joined the military, forgetting my experience and marking it off as a weird dream. And I moved all over the world, visiting different countries and seeing what I like to call the opposite side of the world. But it wasn't too long before we got orders to deploy to war in Iraq. Once I made it down to the desert, something changed again. And I had a horrible dream that my body weighed 100 pounds and I couldn't move, and I could hear people walking into my room, but I wasn't able to turn and see who they were. And it kind of scared me, but I was more amazed at the fact that I couldn't move until I heard someone speak of killing me. Then I got really scared and forced myself to snap out of it. The next night, I did some research on the internet and learned about sleep paralysis, and I was relieved to find out that I'm not the only one who experiences this, and memorized many different ways that people use to overcome it. But as I continued to have more and more of these dreams, I started noticing something that looked very familiar. The white figure that I had come in contact with a few years ago was still hovering over my bed, or over my head, and it never looked down at me, but stared at the door. It held its hands up as if it were ready to catch a baseball or a basketball, and once I made the connection between the two white spirits, I started to get scared even more. Whatever this thing was, it had followed me from my home in Ohio, and every night I had sleep paralysis, I noticed the white spirit, and I would do everything I could to wake up, even forcing myself to roll out of bed and hit the floor to shock myself back to reality. In December 2006, I was injured in Baghdad. I was airlifted out of Iraq and placed in a German hospital for surgery and recovery, and after a few weeks, they released me from the hospital, and I was able to return to the unit's home base in Germany to wait for my unit to get back from Iraq. As soon as I got back here, I started having the sleep paralysis again, and the same white figure continued to hover over my head, whichever way I was laying. It always hovered and faced the door without looking down at me. One night I had been going through relationship problems and dealing with a lot of stuff in my mind that I was no longer afraid. I'd been thinking about suicide and was not at all afraid to go to sleep, even though I knew I would have the same dream again. This time when I opened my eyes, the spirit was there, and I decided to roll out of my bed, and that way I would wake up and then I could just go back to sleep again because I was in no mood to deal with this spirit. And as I attempted to roll out of bed, my feet hit the ground. My knees locked into place and my head balanced on my neck, my body weight 100 pounds, but for the first time ever during sleep paralysis, I was standing up. I was amazed. At the same time, I realized every other time I had sleep paralysis, I was on my bed under the white spirit, and now I had just stood up without having to look. I knew that the spirit was now staring at the back of my head, probably only a few inches away. If it hadn't known I was there before, I was for sure it knew now. This struck the fear into my heart again, and the only thing I could think of was to get away from it. I focused my entire mind on taking a few steps towards the door, and my body moved, slowly, like walking through mud, but I was making progress. I never turned around to look, and as I went around a corner towards the door, I nearly ran into another figure, and this one was completely black, like a shadow, and it stood like a man much bigger than I, and once I saw the other figure, my knees began to give out, and I fell against the wall. Then dropped to the floor, and once I hit the floor, I woke up. The next day, I spent thinking about the night before, playing it through my head over and over again. I didn't want to tell anyone. No one would believe me anyway, but also I think I might have been wrong about the white spirit that stayed over me. I started to piece together how it never looked down at me, but instead always stared at the door, and how it seemed to keep its hands up like it was ready to defend something off. Perhaps the one thing that I have been so afraid of lately has been the one thing protecting me while I slept. But if that's true, then what are these shadow figures that seem to prowl outside my door and wait to come in? What will happen if this guardian white spirit suddenly leaves and never comes back? And why has this chosen me and staying above me for so long? All these questions repeatedly pass through my mind every day, and I can never come up with a solution, which is why I'm looking for outside help. I'm hoping if I post this story and throw up some sort of flag, someone will read this and be able to give me insight into what I'm dealing with. Or even if all I'm doing is having a dream that keeps relapsing, any help would be greatly appreciated. Well, that's pretty profound. I do think it's possible that is the guardian. What is it? I don't know. This gets into the non-human entity kind of realm, and it's anybody's guess what the names of these things are. But wow, just wow. I don't have any answers, I guess. I have to be honest. I have ideas, but yeah, that's a tough one. Okay, now this is a short one, and this is going to be the last one for the night, ladies and gentlemen, so I hope you don't mind. How long have we been doing this? Let's see. Oh, yeah, we're going to go for the full hour. This should be about a 2-minute story. That's about right. So this one's coming out of Colorado, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Christian, and I've been told many, many times not to do things like practicing magic or doing Ouija board and stuff like that. And usually I don't because I'm not that interested in it. But one night, my friends and I decided to get together and decided to just try her older brother's Ouija board. It didn't take long for things to get out of control. We began to ask very personal questions. And I asked if my friend had a crush on anyone, and if so, who. My friend was denying the fact that she liked a guy, but I could tell she was lying. And I placed my hand on the pointer, but it was cold, freezing, like ice. I pulled back quickly, and the pointer moved by itself, telling us who she liked. She freaked out, firstly because it moved by itself, and secondly because it was right. Excuse me. We kept it up, asking more and more personal questions, and finally, my guy friend got the courage to ask, "Who is in the room with us?" Slowly it moved. BEELZEBOT. And my friends didn't know what it meant, but I did. I don't know if that's the right spelling for it to be what this person thinks it is. I flipped. I couldn't help myself. I grabbed the board with strength I didn't know I had and ripped it in half, and then quarters, and then eighths. I seriously don't know where the strength came from. I took the pointer and threw it in the bonfire. We were out camping, and since this board wasn't mine, my friends tried to stop me, and as soon as I destroyed the board, I turned and asked if they knew who Beelzebot was. That's not the right spelling, but anyway. They shook their heads, and I told them it was Satan. After that incident, I never have ever in my life done anything like that again. It's not Beelzebot. That's not the name. But I guess if anything, that seems to indicate it. It was this person, this girl's understanding that spelled it. So it seems to me that part might have been a subconscious kind of session. I don't know. I don't know how to explain the pointer moving by itself, if that did indeed happen. But the name is not Beelzebot, it's Beelzebub. And I'm pretty sure, I'm like 99% sure about that. Let me just reference this to make sure I'm not being an idiot here. Beelzebub. B-U-B at the end, not B-O-T. So the fact that she thought that that's how it was spelled, and that's what was spelled out on the Ouija board, it kind of leads me to believe that that was more her consciousness coming through and not necessarily a spirit. I don't know. That's, to me, a pretty blazing error. And so I don't think that it was necessarily Beelzebub. And here's the thing, ladies and gentlemen. Here's my thoughts on this. If there really is a Beelzebub or Satan, is he really going to waste time in a slumber party? I mean, if this is like the Lord of all evil, is he really going to hang out with a bunch of teens or preteens and move a pointer around? I mean, seriously, that's just hard to get my head around that the Lord of all evil in the universe is going to sit and hang out at a slumber party and move a Ouija pointer. I don't know. Just my ideas, but anyway, that's what I think. B. Arthur. Rand Electric, you crack me up. All right, guys. Okay. Ouija with a bad speller. Yeah, exactly. All right, so that's going to wrap up the show for tonight. I hope you enjoyed it. To those of you that are watching Game of Thrones, it's okay. You can always play this later. We'll be waiting for you. Just when you get time, come and check out the episode. And remember, everybody, make sure to check out the podcast tomorrow. That'd be great. I would love you a long time for doing it. And definitely spread the word if you would. If you know other people that are into the paranormal and you want to introduce them to the portal, the nice thing about podcasts is they're downloadable. So you kind of click it. If you got one of the podcast players, every phone comes with one. So just search for the Paranormal Portal and you can download the episode and listen to it at your leisure. So it's all about making it easy for you to spend time on the portal. But I love you all. Be good, be kind, be nice. Take care of each other. Help each other out. Find the magic in every day and remember to laugh as much as you can. I'll be back tomorrow with more bedtime stories, but you guys have a great night and sweet dreams.